Hello once again everyone, Riley's my name and today history is our game. Before we begin the video today, I'd like to just go over the trigger warning here. This video contains mentions of graphic violence, and it contains graphically violent photographs as well. The Western world has mythologized its historical warrior women more than it likes to admit. The most notable example of this warrior woman archetype in European history is arguably Saint Jeanne d'Arc, more commonly referred to by her anglicized name, Joan of Arc. Claiming to act under divine guidance, Joan of Arc became a military leader who overcame the strict gender roles of her time and gained a notoriety as heroine of France, of which she is now a patron saint. She has become the subject of hundreds of works of art and thousands of pieces of literature, one of which is displayed here. Joan of Arc is recognized all over the world as a heroic woman, a tragic figure who sacrificed herself to save her country. The Eastern world has never lacked for notable warrior women. Japan had Onimusha like Lady Tomoe or Lady Hangaku, notable women who fought on opposing sides for the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan during the Genpei War, and Princess Komatsu, Tokugawa Ieyasu's adopted daughter who fought for him during his rise to power. Much closer to the present is our subject for today. The Japanese spy formerly and popularly known as Yoshiko Kawashima, the Eastern Jewel, Japan's answer to Joan of Arc. Yoshiko Kawashima, from 1907 to 1925, had many names in her lifetime. For starters, she was not Japanese by blood. She was born Eisenjuro Xianyu, sinicized as Jin Bihui, courtesy name Dongzhen, which means Eastern Jewel. On the 24th of May 1907, she was born to Shanxi and his concubine, Lady Jiangjia, and she was only 4 years old when, in 1912, the Xinhai Revolution officially overthrew the Qing dynasty. At the age of 8 in 1915, she was adopted by a family friend named Naniwa Kawashima, a Japanese spy and mercenary adventurer in China whose exploits could fill their own video. It was he who raised Yoshiko in his house in Tokyo, sending her to school for a proper education that also involved both fencing and judo. Circa 1922, the family relocated to Matsumoto. Kawashima's childhood was unusual for a Japanese girl. She had many boyish habits despite her feminine traits and would only use the male style of Japanese grammar when she spoke. In 1922, when Kawashima was 14, Shanxi died of natural causes, and Jiangjia followed him by ritual suicide, as was Manchu tradition. Kawashima dropped out of school to mourn, but was not readmitted due to her boyish disposition. At this point in the video, I would like to pause the story to talk about that. At the age of 18, on 22nd November 1925, Yoshiko Kawashima decided to cease being a woman forever and bid farewell to female life. She had her hair cut into a crew cut and began to dress in men's clothing from then on. It was here that she adopted the name Ryosuke. You may be wondering why I've written pre and post transition down here, and I'd like to talk about that as well. Kawashima said in an interview 2 days later, "I was born with what the doctors call a tendency toward the third sex, and so I cannot pursue an ordinary woman's goals in life. Since I was young, I've been dying to do the things that boys do. My impossible dream is to work hard like a man for China, for Asia." Here, third sex refers to neither a man nor a woman, but something betwixt or completely outside of that binary. Many historians have referred to Kawashima as a cross-dressing female whose decision was spurred on by some sort of trauma. I would argue that Ryosuke Kawashima was a transgender man. He was at the very least a gender non-conforming woman, but through his own words, we can see that he wished to be a man. So I will henceforth refer to Kawashima with male pronouns in accordance with his impossible dream. I used his female name and pronouns earlier because that was before he socially transitioned, and it felt appropriate to refer to him that way due to this. Traditional Japanese only has one pronoun, kare, which means that one. The feminine pronoun kanojo, that woman, was created in the 19th century during the Meiji Restoration as a result of westernization. If this video was in Japanese, I would simply use kare throughout. The historians that I mentioned earlier would doubtless accuse me of presentism for my take, but transgender individuals have existed for much longer than they have been in the public eye. I am simply making a case for a different and perhaps more accurate interpretation. After his transition, Ryosuke Kawashima would have an eventful career in espionage, truly his father's son. In November of 1927, Kawashima, still legally a woman, was arranged to be married in Ryojun, also called Port Arthur, but that's now Dailan in China, to Ganjur Job, the son of Inner Mongolian General Baobab. In 1930, they were divorced after 3 years of being married. Ryosuke left what was then Mongolia and lived a wanton life in coastal China, engaging in trysts with both men and women. While living in Shanghai's foreign concession, he met Ryokichi Tanaka, a Japanese military attaché and intelligence officer. He lived with Tanaka for some time, who used Ryosuke's Manchu and Mongolian connections to expand his network. He was present for the Shanghai incident of 1932, but chose to remain in Shanghai as a spy after Tanaka was recalled. During this time, Ryosuke undertook several undercover missions in Manchuria. Ryosuke was also well acquainted with his cousin, Puyi, the last Qing emperor. It was through Kawashima's persuasion that Puyi would later become the figurehead of Manchukuo, the Japanese puppet state of Manchuria, although he believed his cousin was too susceptible to Japanese influence to rule effectively. Kawashima served many roles in Manchukuo, including as leader of a counterinsurgent cavalry force during the pacification of Manchukuo in 1932, and he continued to operate that unit until the late 30s. Kawashima became a well-known figure in Manchukuo, and began to be called things like the Eastern Jewel and the Joan of Arc of Manchukuo, which was unfortunate due to his nature as a spy. So he became less a spy and more a symbol during the Second Sino-Japanese War, but even then, his value as a symbol to the Japanese was compromised by his increasingly critical tone towards them, and he gradually faded from public life during the Second Sino-Japanese War. At the end of the Second Sino-Japanese War, Kawashima was captured by the Chinese and held in Hebei Model Prison under his Chinese pronounced feminine name, Chuandao Fangzi, but he later identified his Chinese name as Jinbi Hui, which is the name that the court documents use. On 20th of October of 1947, he was charged with treason as a Hanjian, an arch-traitor to both the nation of China and the Han Chinese people. In his defense, his lawyers attempted to have him tried as a war criminal rather than a Hanjian, on the grounds of his Japanese nationality and his Manchu Banner ethnicity, which was emphasized strategically for this purpose. However, based on Kawashima's failure to renounce his Chinese citizenship through the Department of Civil Affairs and the principle of jus sanguinis, the appeal was refused. Ryosuke Kawashima was found guilty and executed by gunshot to the back of the head on 25th March 1948. His body was then put on public display, and it was later cremated, after which it was repatriated to the Kawashima family home in Matsumoto. He is now buried at Shinroji Temple in Matsumoto, under the name of Yoshiko Kawashima. Japanese history portrays Kawashima's legacy as that of a tragic military heroine, emphasis on heroine, but Chinese history tells of a traitor and a wanton villain. I have tried here to tell his story as impartially as possible due to this factor of conflicting biases in my sources. To this day in China, Kawashima is still considered a Hanjian, but his Japanese nationality and Manchu ethnicity bring into question whether he should simply be considered a war criminal instead of a traitor to the nation. Comparing him to Joan of Arc is a common thing to do, but by the end of this video, perhaps it is no longer a fitting comparison. There may not be a figure in this time frame or in all of history quite as unique as Ryosuke Kawashima, the Eastern Jewel, former Manchu royalty turned transgender bisexual Japanese super spy.